south of the Great Lakes capital city, covering all of North America via satellite, AM and FM stations all across the country, and live and archived on the World Wide Web. This is hour number 3, the third and final hour of the broadcast here on Govern America. It continues to be the 5th of December, 2009. We're just a few days away from Copenhagen and the Copenhagen Conference there, which is supposed to define or create a document which would bind to the countries, the signatory countries, to a emissions reduction scheme. And the other side calls it a scheme, by the way, which is really kind of funny, but it's true, ladies and gentlemen. And we're visiting with Dr. Timothy Ball. He's a renowned environmental consultant and former climatology professor at the University of Winnipeg, Manitoba. And we're talking about this IPCC, the UN's climate arm, environmental arm, which deals with global warming and climate change. And Dr. Ball, before, at the end of the last hour, you were talking about 4 things that the IPCC controls. Did you want to pick it up there?
Yeah, well, it's actually the scientists at the Climatic Research Unit and a few outside, like Michael Mann at Penn State.
Who's under investigation now, I understand.
Yeah, I love the comment that somebody said that he should go from Penn State to State Penn. But there's all, and we see with John Daly, there's all kinds of humor out there about this, which is healthy and
which is fantastic because
absolutely.
Yeah, people. This is unfortunately as entertainment oriented as society has become. This is about the only way you can reach mainstream America anymore.
Oh, exactly, and of course that in a way has always been the way. Satire. When you look at Jonathan Swift in history and his role, because you can deflect and say, well, no, I'm just joking about this, but as the old saying says, there's many a true word said in jest.
Yeah.
So that's its function in society. But anyway, back to the 4 areas that these people control. The reports that come out every about 5 years or so, starting in 1995, that the chapters that they control are 1, atmospheric chemistry, which of course is the CO2 chapter, the greenhouse gases. The second one is paleoclimate, which is the reconstruction of past climates, and the one I'm most familiar with. That's where the famous hockey stick was done, and Michael Mann.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the hockey stick in a moment.
Okay, and the third one are the computer models, because those are used for their projections, and they say, oh, it's a computer model, therefore it's got to be right. Well, sorry, garbage in, garbage out, as everybody knows. Okay, but the fourth one, and this is the most interesting one. Are we okay?
Yeah, real quickly.
Okay, well, can we leave it? Because
we can do that. I was just going to have you mention it, and we can come back in
the summary for policymakers. We'll come back to that.
All right, let's go ahead and take a break, folks. We'll have more time, Dr. Ball, on the other side, too. So stay with us, folks. This is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Our guest is Dr. Timothy Ball. We'll be back in a moment. All right, we're back. This is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Our guest is Dr. Timothy Ball, and we're talking about ClimateGate, the hacked emails that were leaked out and have become a major, major headache for the climate scientists. Well, really more the political people who are behind the scenes pushing the global warming agenda down the throats of really the world, because this is a worldwide system of control. And Dr. Ball, you were talking about 4 areas of control with regard to the IPCC.
Right.
Go ahead and
so they control those chapters, and the summary for policymakers was the last thing that I mentioned, and this was one of the things that Morris Strong wrote into the rules of the way that they operate. The summary for policymakers is prepared by a separate group from those that are doing the 3 other reports. Working Group 1 does the science or technical report, and there's about 600 people involved in that, but actually very few that actually do the writing, and most of them the CRU people. And then there's the Working Group 2 and 3, which is 1,900 of the 2,500 people involved. They accept the findings of Working Group 1 as given. And in other words, and they're saying, oh, yeah, warming is occurring and humans are causing it. They accept that without question. And then they look at, well, what are the impacts? And it's from there you hear all these scare stories about, oh, this is going to happen and that's going to happen.
Right.
And then the third group do, oh, well, here's what you've got to do. You've got to have taxes. You've got to control and all of that. So So the whole thing is very, very cleverly crafted. But the summary for policymaker group, as I said, is independent of that, except for 2 or 3 scientists who advise the bureaucrats and politicians that prepare that summary. Of course, always the 2 or 3 scientists that advise those bureaucrats and politicians for that summary are from this CRU unit. Okay, so Michael Mann, for example, has been one. Stephen Schneider from Boulder, and Phil Jones. They are always there controlling that. The summary for policymakers is then written and released to the public. It comes out, okay, and with all the scare, the world's going to fry and it's terrible and we got to stop. And the summary then goes back to the science report people, and it says, make sure your science report agrees with the summary that we've released. And that's actually, yeah.
So in other words, what you have is you have the tail wagging the dog.
Exactly. Well, worse than that. I would agree with you. That's a good analogy. But what you got here is the flea on the hair on the tail that's wagging the dog, right? It's that extreme. And of course, as I said, Strong knew this. This is how, in terms of reference, you keep control of things in the process. And so the summary goes out, and most journalists have no knowledge of science. They look for sensationalism. Very, very few of them ever go back and read what the actual science report says.
If it bleeds, it leads. That's the saying that we used to have in television news when I worked in there. Is that and I worked with it for years. Yep. Anything that happens, if it bleeds, it leads, and certainly that's the thing that gets the ratings. That you have to draw the attention of the viewers,
exactly,
or readers, or whatever it is you're dealing with.
Right. Now, of course, one of the things that you're going to hear, the argument, they'll say, oh, well, look, the science report, but it has all of the limitations on the science, which don't appear in the summary for policymakers until the most recent one. In the 2007 report, because of complaints by people like myself and Lindzen and others are saying, well, you're just giving, you're just saying these things. We want some probabilities on that. What are the chances? Well, Stephen Schneider came up with a table of, very likely is, and likely is percentages-wise. So they tried to cover themselves with that because of the critique. But the summary for policymakers is really where the connection to the public is made. And so that's how the IPCC and the CRU people control this whole process. And, of course, those IPCC reports are the basis for the science that's going to be used at Copenhagen and so on. Mm-hmm. Now, Strong, of course, not just content with that. Okay, now he's got the science controlled. Now he goes and forms, and by the way, the first meeting at which the CRU people like Jones and Wigley, they were in attendance when the IPCC was being discussed and formulated, was in Villach, Austria in 1985, and all these people were there. And so you had the connection. So now Strong has the science part of it covered. He then goes and sets up the Rio conference in 1992, at which he involves the environmental groups and the NGOs, and everybody's saying, oh, how democratic, he's bringing these people in. He was selling them a bill of goods.
Right.
He was, but he needed the public support. He needed that huge voice of the people to get the politicians on side. Okay, and he did that through the Rio conference.
But he didn't really involve the people. He involved extremists.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and of course, out of that came Kyoto.
This is kind of like the old communist tactic of pressure from below, pressure from above. Trying to create an idea, or at least the appearance, that there really is a mandate for these policies that they want to push, when in reality the average person doesn't even know about it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And of course then as I said, Kyoto came, and they went off to Kyoto, and of course these people have been flying all over the world, 2,500 plus to exotic locations. Go and look at where they've held all their conferences, Bali and all of, at the taxpayers' expense, while they're cooking plans to destroy the tax base of the Western world.